Hi again. In this video, we're going to talk about collaboration. We're going to talk about the type of platforms, the type of place we could find ourselves collaborating. Now, collaboration, especially in the about 10 years ago, at the beginning of social media and kind of mass platform, had lots of really good press with books like this called We Think, talking about the wonders and the marvel of group work and teams, Wikinomics. Everyone was going to become a part of the new creative class, working together on platforms of mass participation, a bit like the Wikipedia, and the future was social. For many people, the future still is social, although the last 10 years we've seen some of the negative effects also of these platforms of mass collaboration and mass participation. I think it's important before you start collaborating, before you start building a group of people to work together, to think a little bit about whether a team, a community of practice, or a network is really what you need. When we're considering teamwork, we really need to focus on an activity or a shared objective. People need to be working towards a common goal, common for all of the team. And let's be honest, in research and in research groups, very often we're all working towards different goals or different objectives, and we're working much more as a community of practice. And this is not always bad, because communities of practice are actually extremely useful for learning. One of the things that we do in a community of practice is learn from others who have more experience and more knowledge than ourselves, but they may be working towards different objectives. To think of this idea of communities of practice, you might want to think of plumbers, for example, guys who come to fix your bathroom. Now, they form a community with other plumbers, but they're all fixing different bathrooms. They share the tools, they share knowledge, they share practice together, although they're not working towards all fixing the same bathroom. I don't know if that explains it. I hope so. So there's a kind of a looser, more informal relationship between a community of practice than between a team, where we'd need lots of different specialists in different areas working towards this common goal. We tend to use the concept of team to pretty much talk about every collaborative activity, when we really should be using a little bit more accuracy in our descriptions. And then finally, in a much more informal and opportunistic and loose sense, we would have the working together in networks. Networks are very creative, they're very useful for gathering information, but they are not very good at working on focused projects. So the more focus you want, the more shared is the objective, the more you would lean towards a team, which would normally be smaller than a community of practice and smaller than a network. I always like to think, before I start any project work, do I need a team for this? Do I need individual work, or are the results to be found in the community or in the network? Networks, communities of practice. If you're interested in the whole concept of communities of practice, I'm looking for it here. The gurus of community of practice are Jean Lave, of course, and Etienne Wenger, whose extremely readable book on the subject is called just that, Communities of practice. A lot of their work was related to education and learning, but really a research project and a doctoral thesis is the culmination of all that learning. So very interesting writers on the subject. Of course, other aspects influence whether a team is going to be successful or not is the type of organizational culture that we've got going for ourselves. In the first module, we talked about this Cameron and Quinn's competing values framework for defining cultures, and really the ideal for any teamwork would probably be working towards a more open systems model. I'm thinking of companies like Gore. I'm thinking of political parties which work in a much more open sense of kind of free operating teams. An open systems model where the leadership can be more fluid, it tends to go where the knowledge is possibly a better culture for organizing your teams. Now, a very hierarchical internal process model would often create too much discipline and hierarchical discipline for teams really to flourish. Okay? So there, think about the type of culture you're trying to install your teams in. I worked with a lot of organizations that really just didn't have the culture for teams to survive, and then we get a lot of what I call bullshit teams, where we're really just teams by name rather than by activity. For teams to work as an activity, and again this is something we've seen earlier on, but we're going to go into it in a bit more depth here. We need to learn how to manage and how to lead our teams. Team leadership can be fluid, and very often within a team the leadership emerges rather than is installed top down. It kind of tends to emerge from the bottom up. Susan Hill's model for team leadership is pretty good description of the activities that we need to develop in ourselves and to make sure are present in our team. There are internal and external leadership actions. Internal means that we're looking at the inner workings of the teams, and external leadership actions would be our relationship with the environment, our relationship with the wider community, and all of this is going to influence the team effectiveness, and the decisions that we take, the leadership decisions, really are going to influence all of that as well. If we start looking at the work inside the team, now inside the team our tasks may be fixing and focusing the goals. The goals would need to be smart objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and temporal, fixed in time. We also need to structure for the results, and there we really need to be working on our motivation techniques that we saw in Module 2. We need to work on our facilitative capacity, our coaching for decision making, training other members of the team, and fixing the standards, maintaining these standards, setting kind of benchmarking what we mean by success. And the relational activities of team leadership, we go past command really. Command as a leadership style isn't that great in a team. It may work in a football team for a limited period of time, but then sooner or later it creates this kind of toxic environment. It's very good in a crisis, and in the COVID pandemic, command was necessary, but there's a limit to how much people can take. So we need to work on these relational management styles, capacities of coaching people, collaborating, our active listening, managing conflict, and also learning how to mediate, how to negotiate, and how to arbitrate conflicts between people. We need to avoid some of the dangers of team leadership and management. We also need to build commitment, satisfy needs, and model the principles, this transformational ideas. We have to be the values that we want to project. Now, all of that's working inside the team. Now, outside the team, we need to be networking, because teams can become very endogamic. They can be very closed. In university life, there can be lots of factions and groups and competing groups, and kind of lots of psychopolitics and psychodrama. Well, we have to avoid that, really, for our team to be successful, because that really isn't the work, or shouldn't be. But we do need to advocate for our group. We do need to sell our research ideas. We need to sell our group to the wider community. We need to negotiate support, economic, academic, and otherwise. But we also need to protect our groups. And lots of these are kind of very middle management-y type skills, but we do need to protect the group sometimes from pressure outside so that they can work. We need to be able to assess, and we need to be able to communicate and share the information, share the knowledge with others. I'm sure a lot of you are seeing that now in university life is becoming actually quite markety and competitive. The marketization of education has been sort of in place for a long time, but it's certainly accelerating in Spain, as far as I can see. There's a dark side, of course. There's a dark side to teamwork, and a lot of that really can depend on the type of cultures that we generate. Here I've got Mary Douglas and Wiedeski's group grid matrix for kind of cultures and what can happen, what can go wrong. When the group is weak, there isn't a strong feeling of group, and the regulations, the norms, and the rules are weak, we will build a very individualistic team and a very individualistic culture in our group. Very good for spontaneous action. It tends to be an unregulated, open, entrepreneurial environment, but not always very focused. When we go too far on the group and too far on the rules and the regulations, maybe we'll create this very hierarchical internal process model with emphasis on strong regulation, rules. And when the group is weak, the sensation of group is weak, but the regulations are strong, the grid is strong, there's inflexible, we may build a very fatalistic, apathetic, powerless type of culture. Maybe the best really is to have quite a loose sense of rules and a strong sense of group, and that's where we're going to get this kind of cooperative, mutualist, solidarity oriented group egalitarianism in our group. That's quite difficult to achieve, and there are some very clear and visible signs of when a group is going wrong, when a team is going wrong, or when a community is not functioning. The first is the appearance of groupthink. Groupthink is really just shared beliefs, shared ideas. the man in the mountain problem that we looked at. Sometimes I get groups absolutely convinced it's one answer or the other, and they will only try to convince themselves with arguments that support their own beliefs. They will validate their beliefs rather than validate the knowledge. Another negative aspect of teams is the Ringelmann effect. That is, after a certain point of people, the more people I add to a project, the less effort, individual effort, people make. Ringelmann, of course, the experiments with people pulling on a rope, the tug of war activities, found that after a certain number of people just stop pulling. The danger of psychopolitics, working with others. There's a lot of psychodrama, a lot of psychopolitics, a lot of my group against your group, or me against everyone else in my group. That's the worst. And a lot of time can be dedicated to this psychopolitics nonsense. You really have to think, is there a lot of psychopolitics in my faculty, in my university? Well, maybe I need to change my university. And then the danger of bad consensus, of reaching decisions by consensus instead of reaching decisions because they're right. A lot of democratically taken decisions are pretty bad, and this is one of the dangers that we have with group work, with collaboration, and with badly organized or unfocused group work. If you're interested in the positive side of collaboration and so on, this book is interesting. It's got lots of interesting. See if I can flip the camera so that reads the right way. Yes, there we go. If I put it up, flipping the camera, it works. We think Mass Innovation, Mass Production, book by Charles Ledbetter, which is actually quite interesting on this subject. There are lots of others. 2008, I believe this book, the Wikinomics by Dan Tapscott, was kind of the very pre-Facebook, Google, Donald Trump type of world. For the dark side of kind of mass collaboration and platforms, the book by I'll look for it. Shoshana. I'll find it. On the economy of Google and all of these companies. But I'll find that and I'll upload that into the Moodle for us. Okay, so there's going to be a forum question on this subject about cultures and about the culture in your research group. Hopefully it's not going to get you too depressed, but also thinking about the kind of conditions that you need for a team to be successful in your research project, and the people that you're going to need to be working with in your project. Okay, and maybe we will have a little bit of a questionnaire on this to see how we are in team leadership skills. That could be a good idea. Okay, speak to you soon.